there were many other proposed areas for creation of a Jewish nation. I want to go over some of those regions before we get to our guests. We're just going to kind of quickly go over this. But Israel, where it is today, was, again, there was a lot of motivating factors as to why the Zionists, who were not religious at all and didn't give two shits about God or religion, chose the religious homeland. They did that because they knew that it would be one of the main motivating factors to get to their end goal, which was a bunch of people. You need a bunch of people for a nation. But there were many other areas that were proposed for the creation of a Jewish nation. Some of them were, for example, really early on, this is actually before the modern Zionist movement, was Ararat City. And this is in northern New York, upstate New York, where it is believed to be the site of Noah's Ark. It is where Noah's Ark apparently ended up, is what people believe. And so this island there was thought to be where a homeland for Jews could be created. That was rejected, unsure why. In the modern Zionist movement, one that was proposed to Theodor Herzl's Zionist group in 1903 was to take some of what would be modern-day Kenya. It was the Uganda scheme, is what they called it. And it would be Kenya and Uganda, and that they would settle the Jews in this area right there. And this was brought up to the World Zionist Organization's 6th Zionist Congress that they had gotten together. And it wasn't, people weren't super thrilled about this. 3 men actually went on a delegation to check it out to see, okay, can we put the home of Jews right here in the middle of Africa? And they went to inspect the area. They said that the high elevation gave it a nice temperate climate, making it suitable for European settlement. And it looks beautiful. It looks like a great place to land. But the observers said that what they found when they got there was a dangerous land filled with lions and other creatures. And they were like, what the hell? We're going to have to outrun lions. We're going to have to no, we're not going to do that. And also, it was populated by a large number of Maasai people, which is one of what you're seeing right there on the screen, who did not seem at all amenable to an influx of people coming from Europe. So they didn't want a bunch of Europeans come into their land either, just like the Arabs didn't want a bunch of Europeans come into their land. And so the idea was rejected. They were like, these people don't like us, and there's lions, so we're out of here. There was also an idea to put a Jewish homeland inside of Russia. This was like an oblast. This was a Stalin plan. Stalin actually had a national policy where national groups that formed the Soviet Union could receive a territory in which to pursue cultural autonomy in the socialist framework. So there were actually some ideas to put it in Crimea, what is modern day Crimea, but that was rejected by the Russians and the Ukrainians because they said that this would. Again, they were like, this would be antagonizing to the non-Jews living in those regions. We can't put a Jewish nation there and make the area Jewish when these people are not Jewish that are there already. But this idea was rejected to put the oblast all the way on the eastern side of Russia because it's like a swamp land, and the settlers would have to rebuild their lives from scratch. It was just like an inhospitable climate, and they said that also. A lot of the Jews said, you just want to stick us here because it sucks. This area sucks. You want us as far away as possible, and this land is terrible. And that's the only reason why you're sticking us here. There was an idea, it was kind of floated around to put Jewish refugees in Japan. It was called the Fugu Plan. There's really no evidence that this was a genuine plan, but that is what they were talking about. Shanghai apparently... My producer said that was one of the spots too, but I don't see that on the list. So I'm going to skip that one for now. So just ignore that picture. Madagascar was another one that was suggested. Madagascar, is an island out off the coast of Africa. Said that the Third Reich government, this was actually Nazis. The Nazi Germany said, hey, you know what? Why don't we stick them? So this was, they decided on this in the early 40s, because you got the Arabs were lobbying the Germans saying, we don't want them over here in Palestine. The Germans were like, well, then where are we going to take them? It was such a good idea. It was such a good idea that we could just send them off to some other homeland. Well, you don't want them. Where can we put them? Hey, Madagascar. And so they proposed Madagascar. This didn't come through because Germany didn't win. But the idea was that Germany thought, look, we're going to win, and we're going to end up with the British naval fleet. And so we could transport everybody, all the Jews, to Madagascar. But they didn't win, so that didn't happen. There was also an idea to put the Jewish homeland. Italy said, well, we got a solution. Part of the fascist Italian government said, we got a solution. We'll stick them in what is now Ethiopia. There's a lot of Jews already there, they said, so why don't we give them the homeland in Ethiopia? And the Jews there won't say no to them because they're also Jews. But that again didn't come to fruition because Italy and Germany did not win. But there were ideas to move the Jews to a variety of different places, not just into Palestine, where the Arabs were very much saying, we do not want them here. This is our land. We want independence. We want to finally be independent and free from Ottoman rule, from British rule, and we're willing to fight for it. And so they were thinking about all these other areas. Franklin Roosevelt got in on this and he said, I got a plan. Why don't we put them in Alaska? And he actually had a Sitka, Alaska plan where this was proposed. And Franklin D. Roosevelt's administration said, okay, we'll do this. But what we're going to do is we're going to move 10,000 settlers to Alaska each year for 5 years. But only 10% of them can be Jewish. And he said he wanted to do that because it would avoid the undoubted criticism that the program would receive if it brought too many Jews into the country. So that didn't end up working. The Zionists did not want to move to Sitka, Alaska. They certainly didn't want to move there and only be 10% of the population and continue to be a minority. So they rejected that plan and it didn't go through. But it's just fascinating. There were these other places that were proposed. They were rejected for a variety of reasons, mostly because most areas of the world are not going to be amenable to this superpower coming in and saying, we're carving out this area and we're putting a new group of people here and you don't have any say on that. People are not exactly thrilled about that idea. We see that now with our southern border. People are not thrilled with an idea of a bunch of immigrants coming in and flooding the place. So it was rejected everywhere. This idea of creating a Jewish home was just basically rejected everywhere and everywhere and everywhere. And again, the argument that is being used over and over and over ad nauseum about the Palestinians right now, we're seeing this in mainstream media, being used on Fox News, being used on social media, being used everywhere, which is, well, even the Arabs won't take the Palestinians, so there must be something wrong. They must know something. If they're not willing to take the Palestinians, they must know something. You could use that same argument about the Jews, and it would be wrong in both situations. It would be wrong. People just naturally, countries don't want to take in refugees. Naturally, countries are very skeptical of that idea of opening up their borders and a flood of people coming in. That is a natural instinct. We see that from culture to culture against people of all stripes, and it's age old. It's continued on, and it's continuing to this day here in our country now. So it is just circling back. Basically, the Jewish people didn't want to go to other places. They wanted to go home. That's what they wanted. The Zionist movement, they said, look, we're from, the kingdom of Israel has been around a couple of times in ancient history, and it was here. It was Jerusalem. It was the Holy Land. That is where we come from, and that is where we want to live. That is their home. And I get that. But guess what? That same exact argument is being used by the Palestinians today. The Palestinians say, this is our home. My family's been here for traceable hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. And so why would I be needing to be expelled and deported to some other Arab country where my family's not from? My family's lived in this home for 500-600 years. Why am I suddenly being expelled? Because you say, it's yours, it's my home too. So the same arguments are being made about the Palestinians that were made about the Jews. And the two groups are so similar, and they're cousins at the end of the day. They're related. And they have to learn to live together in peace. They have to. It is imperative for everyone's health and safety over there to live in peace, to figure it out. And that is what many of us are hoping for, a ceasefire to end the bloodshed and to figure out a path forward to peace.